Hi, welcome to Recruiter Fuel. My name is David Bonasso. I'm the videographer here at Qualitas International. And I'm here with Michael Bonasso in this edition, where we're going to talk about the AI relationship with recruiting. I think, as far as it goes, I feel like people are kind of burned out on like AI, like, oh, there's AI here and there. But I really feel like there's an important tool that we can be using here going forward with recruiting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. AI right now is kind of like that song that plays one too many times in the radio. I feel
Yeah,
like it's a hot topic. Everyone's interested in getting involved with it. There's so many new technologies, and they're coming and going on a daily basis at this rate. And it's not just in the recruiting industry that AI is really taking a foothold, but for our purposes, the recruiting industry, I think, is going to benefit significantly from some of the tools that are out there. So from note-taking abilities and, on the note-taking point, I think that notes from interviews will be a lot more accurate, and notes from intake calls and different client meetings will all, and even internal meetings, will all be a lot more accurate and allow us to be more present in the work that we're doing. So that's what I've been seeing quite a bit, and the amount that I've been involved in it.
yeah, I feel like that just the information gathering standpoint of, you have all this information you got in a candidate, things coming at you constantly, having something to sort of like zip it all up that you
Yeah.
can hand over to your superior and be like, hey, like, listen, this is a great candidate. Look at all this information I got them. They did this, this, and this. Just makes it all the easier.
And it leaves very little room for interpretation. That's where a lot of things are lost in this industry and in this line of work is, you know, you have an interview, you're taking your notes, and then you get involved in a more in-depth part of the discussion, which you should as a recruiter. But having, for example, like an AI note taker that is listening in on your calls and digesting all the information, processing it and formatting it into a user-friendly look, if you will. It helps you to be more engaged, but also, again, like I said, it leaves very little room for interpretation because the transcript is the transcript. And if, candidate A says they're making this much money, you don't have to guess because you can go back and look up on the transcript whatever they said exactly. So it's very, very helpful. That's
Yeah,
something that
and
we're using right now.
you're not like skimming through, any like audio stuff that you might have recorded, stuff like that. It's
Right.
just right in front of you. I think some of them like summarize, don't they? Like they
Yes.
give you like minutes of like, all right, this candidate or this person talked about this at this point, and sort of give you like an overhead view. Like you don't have to skim through the verbatim stuff. Right?
Yes. So we use an AI note taker currently. We just started using it very recently. And
I feel like that came around like a wave. Like I think one person used that, and everybody was like, "Holy, like
yeah,
we need to start using this."
yes.
So like I think because I hear other recruiters start talking about like, oh, this is such a godsend. Like
Oh,
this is
yeah.
like
No, it was something that we had been talking about for some time. We did a trial run with it before the holidays, and right before Thanksgiving, we signed up,
it was like really
we're
recent.
actually very, very recent. We've been using it, and um, it's been phenomenal. It's been very busy. We haven't had a chance to roll it all out officially yet, but it does summarize, and it has the ability to listen in on, video calls, whether it's Teams or Zoom, and standard just, phone calls through, 8x8 or whatever we're using. So if it is a Teams call or a Zoom call, it will divide up the transcript by the speaker. Usually it has whatever name is being presented on that call, so you can, with no second guessing, who said what, when they said it, and for the most part, exactly what they said. There are a few things where, you'll say one thing and it'll hear another thing,
Yeah.
as with any technology, but for
Well,
the
and
most
we've
part,
all
it's
seen
very
like the weird
accurate.
captions on YouTube and stuff like that.
Exactly.
It's like
It's exactly like that. But it transcribes it all, but it's not just spitting out the transcript from the call. It's analyzing it, organizing it in a fashion that is easy to read, and it prioritizes bits of information based on how long you're talking about it and like keywords. If I'm really drilling on compensation, it's going to have a whole section on compensation whether it's just the base salary or their bonuses or their benefits that are involved. It's all organized and separated accordingly.
Interesting.
It's very interesting, and you can add sections to it as well.
I was going to ask you, can you add, like, I want to make sure when I talk to these 5 candidates that I ask about this, and then have that ready to go right after you get off all the, wow.
So the provider that we use for, the sake of not being mysterious is quill.ai. They are very helpful when it comes to integrating our own templates. So we obviously use a lot of our own templates when it comes to, an interview or a candidate or a new job intake call with a client. So we have been able to import our, basically our language into their system so that their AI processes it and puts it into a format that we like. So it takes that into account, but then you can also go back through and continuously reformat it until you like what you see. So there are different ways to organize it.
So you can have it basically auto feed into like your intake form that you have.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're trying to not let it. That's the important thing, and that's a good point that you bring up about auto feeding in, because it is still AI and it's going to make mistakes. We have been very careful to not let it take over that. It's a tool at the end of the day, right? We don't want it to, we're not using it to replace that task. We're using it to assist in that task.
I mean, a pen can make a mistake just like anything else can.
Indeed.
So
Exactly.
it seems like there's been just a crazy evolution of AI. I remember, just a couple of years ago, it was just whispers about it, and now it's pretty ingrained. What has been your sort of like legacy going from starting out in your position in recruiting to now using those tools? Is it something that's relatively new, or we sort of kept an eye on it?
I've been using it for a little while. I started, just like most people did, using ChatGPT. It's the free version of ChatGPT is so capable that it's honestly sickening. There are so many things that it can do just as long as you have a Google account, So several years ago, before I was actually even with Qualligence, I started using it and got a lot of grief for it because it was so new and people were like, oh, this is going to take your job. I don't know why you're using it. I've never viewed that to be the reality of the situation, and I don't think that will ever be the reality. But when I started using it, it was a very early iteration of ChatGPT, and the main things that I used it for were reformatting resumes or searching resumes for bits of information that I might have missed in my first pass. So it's like you have a built-in second set of eyes, if you will. And honestly, it can write up a job description. It can rewrite a job description. If you're trying to make a LinkedIn post and you don't like the way that it's reading, you can copy and paste it into ChatGPT and it will reformat it so that it flows better, to the reader. So I haven't done this. I've played with it, but I haven't used it like officially, but it can write whole articles if you want to. I used to work very heavily in a specific industry in the building industry, and it is samples from all different kinds of sources. So the information that it compiles is fairly accurate and it reads well, and you'd never know that it was, a bot that wrote it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. There are a lot of different things that you can do with it, but it's easy to get trapped and, kind of fall into letting it do too much.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of what people are afraid of when they talk about, AI is going to come do this and that. And like you said, it's a tool at the end of the day. Typewriters didn't stop people from writing, scribing books, and computers didn't stop people from having to draft things. And it's the tool that you're using for the job, right?
Right. AI serves the recruiter, not the other way around.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. I don't envision a company where a CEO just is like, we're just going to have robots everywhere.
Yeah.
AI is just going to do everything for me. I'm just going to live with ChatGPT. It doesn't make sense.
Well, and the reality is that technology like that's been around, even if they don't call it AI, it's been around for a long time. You've got your job boards, you've got your different sites and companies that help with recruiting efforts, and they're supposed to be the all-in-one recruiter. But if those were the end-all, be-all, we wouldn't be sitting here right now.
It's true.
You know what I mean? True. So it's while it is a new technology, it's not a new idea. The technology is accomplishing the same goal, but I think it's a little more of it can be a little more of a broadly used technology because we as recruiters, I think, will benefit greatly as opposed to some of the fear mongering where people are saying that it's going to take away from the recruiting industry. I think it will add to it.
And you hear rumblings in the videography or the video industry about like AI taking artistic jobs and like that. And it's at the end of the day, there's a human touch to everything.
Yes.
I mean, nothing wrong with like some of the stuff that I've seen come out is, I mean, just from iteration to iteration, looks great.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's a very specific niche that it's fulfilling, and it's a tool for that person to use to fill that niche, not
right.
Taking over somebody actually recording something. You can't replicate that. There's some mistakes and an inaccuracy to all of it. This sort of you grab onto as a person. You're like, oh yeah, okay, this actually feels like I'm talking to a human or I see a human kind of thing. So,
and a lot of those things do look great. And I know what you're talking about. I've seen them, but an AI might be able to create a feature film in the style of Christopher Nolan, but it will never replace Christopher Nolan.
No.
Just like AI will never replace an experienced and competent recruiter. It's just the human element is something that it simply, at least in its current development, is not going to replace.
Well, until robots are hiring other robots, I mean, I think we're good.
That's the problem for tomorrow. I'm not going to worry about that today.
This might be two separate questions. Maybe it's one question. Where do you see AI trending as far as helping recruitment going, and where would you like to see it kind of go?
Well, I think that there are a handful of things that it's going to really establish a foundation. And one, I think, is something we're already seeing with the note taking. That is something that is not very wide. I mean, there are note takers out there, but AI note takers that are processing and analyzing your notes for you, I think that's something that, as fancy as it already is going to become even more advanced and it will be more widely used. So that's one thing for sure. Because it's very widely applicable. It's not just for recruiters. You can be, a student, and that's going to be a huge asset for you. I know there's a lot of talk about students and universities and the use of AI, and that's a whole different story. But for note-taking purposes, I think it will expand significantly, specifically in the recruiting industry. I also think that at a certain point, I haven't seen it yet, but I think at a certain point we'll see candidate analytics. I know that there are some tools within LinkedIn that help you, it provides recommended candidates. LinkedIn's been doing that for years. Based on the candidates that you've selected and reached out to, we think you'd like to look at these people, right? I think it will do that in a more intuitive way with AI. It might be able to build out an entire search for you with a few parameters, as opposed to having to, load in 50 candidates first and reach out to them before it picks up on exactly what you're looking for. You know what I mean? So I think that the analytics part of recruiting and some of the research capabilities that we have as a company and as an industry, I think will be affected greatly by AI. Maybe not now, but soon.
I think it plays very well into one of our next topics coming up, which is proactive recruiting. So stay tuned for that. But Mike, I want to say thank you for being on here and chatting up with this.
Absolutely. Thanks, David.
Thank you.